So firstly, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Bryn Lutz and I'm the Community Development Manager at Basketball SA. I'll allow Sam to introduce himself in a moment, but we've got Sam Elliott from Flinders Uni who's going to present to us, obviously on building confident and resilient athletes. Over the next 12 months or 24 months, we're trying to focus on developing our coaches and obviously giving a chance for people to register for webinars or even in-person sort of sessions for coaches to continue to develop. And obviously we'll still have our coach accreditation along the way, but allowing these development sessions as well. So, really excited to kick off with Sam. Sam's a wonderful presenter and I'm really excited to hear a little bit more on this topic as well. So I'll throw over to Sam now and he can kick off.
Thank you very much, Bryn, and it's great to be here. I appreciate your time as well on a Monday evening, especially this time of the year. It's starting to get a bit colder and many of you, probably like myself, have young families, so I appreciate your time. I'm hoping you can hear me. If not, please let me know straight away in the chat that there's an audio issue, but looks like things are okay at this stage. I'm also working from two screens, so I'm going to try and make really good eye contact with you for the next 90 minutes, but there'll be times when, of course, I'm drifting to different screens to manage the session. If you haven't already, I would encourage you to scan this QR code and enter the code that's on this slide now, because there's going to be opportunities for you to participate in this session. It's not all about me giving information. That's certainly going to be part of the session, but we break it up as well because I want to really sort of gauge your thoughts, your experiences, and even your expectations coming into tonight. So there'll be opportunities. If you don't catch this slide now, there'll be repeat opportunities throughout the session to scan the code and to jump into our chat. So by all means, feel free to participate as much or as little as you would like. So let's jump in. Okay, so firstly, thank you, Bryn, for the opportunity to speak on the topic of building confident and resilient athletes. Really keen to work with this community. I haven't done a lot of work with basketball. It'd be one of the few sporting organisations that I haven't delivered a talk with, but this is a great opportunity for me as much, hopefully, as it is for you as well. I just would like to begin by not acknowledging country. And you might be thinking, why would he do that? I've just completed a wonderful workshop on Kaurna language here at Flinders University, and a wonderful presenter, Jack Bushkin, spoke a lot about the language of Kaurna and the people that he represents, and really gave us a forthright lesson in avoiding the use of acknowledging country, and he had his reasons for that. But I would like to start by saying Niwamani or Ninamani, and hopefully that is well received by our recipients here today. But of course, here at Flinders, we do pay our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, past, present, and emerging. Just really quickly about myself. So as Bryn said, I'm Sam Elliott. I'm an associate professor here at Flinders University. I have a PhD in youth sport parenting and psychosocial development. And I've been at Flinders for about 10 years. So from lecturer through to associate professorship. I've been here for 10 years. I actually get long service leave this year. So really excited to get into that at the end of the year. But I've built a career really researching three main areas, and they are around fundamentally parents and their influence on the psychosocial development of young people. Secondly, mental health and sport outcomes. And as a third area, participation, retention, dropout. And the poor cousin that very, very rarely gets mentioned in that is re-engagement. So I spend a lot of time in these three areas and have a very healthy publication track record in those areas. So hopefully I'll be able to tap into a lot of that tonight to steer the conversation for you guys. I also am a coach outside of my role as an academic and as a husband and father at the South Adelaide Football Club. And my one claim to fame in basketball, so hopefully I'm one of you after I present this, is that growing up in Mount Gambier, I did play for the under-14 Cougars a long time ago, and I think that might have been the most improved for the under-14 Division 2 team. So I love basketball, and my young daughter actually plays for the school and actually is involved in the Fast Break basketball, come and try academy of sorts. So we love basketball as a family, and as I said, it's a pleasure to be here with you guys all this evening. Your first opportunity to engage starts now. So before I jump into things, I'd like to know what you're hoping to learn from tonight's workshop. So you don't have to respond, but I would love for some of you, if not all of you, to scan this code or this QR code, enter the number here. I can see someone's already typing, and just provide a sentence or so on what you're hoping to take out of tonight's workshop. It's my job to do our best to facilitate that and to meet that objective. And it's your job to now help me learn more about what you're hoping to achieve out of that. So the numbers going up, which is great. 5 participants already typing. If you've got a mobile phone, really easy to scan, enter the code, and away we go. So thank you, Kathy, already straight into it. I love the fact that this is in real time. It's very interactive, and we get an opportunity to hear from all of you. So that's fantastic. Mark wants to know about techniques to help his son and his team to learn more about resilience. Great, really good points there by Kathy and also by Mark. Someone else has posted to help children and the team enjoy and play relaxed basketball. Really good one there. Well, now we're loading up. Kathy, Kath has submitted building confidence when returning from injury. Brilliant. We'll definitely tap into that. Uplifting young girls with confidence. We'll definitely tick that box. Strategies to assist young people with challenging situations. 100% we'll tick that box. Tony, what can I do to help my child develop grit and mindset? We won't talk about grit tonight because although resilience and grit tend to emerge together, they are different things, but we'll pick up on that, Tony, when we get to the resilience piece, because it's a really good point that you've made there. Simon, what confidence and resilience means for young females. I really love the attention that you guys have already brought to the conversation, because there are differences when we look at how motivation or confidence, for example, impacts male versus female athletes. So these are really good distinctions that you guys have identified already. So that's fantastic. John has submitted a response here with a varied number of kids to coach, helping them to create confidence in new players and resilience for players who struggle with challenge. Yeah, absolutely. And like the athletes, there'd be no one in this session tonight that would have the perfect model of coping with challenge. It can get all players down and all people in sport from time to time. So that's a really great point, John. And Kath, coping and managing fear when back on the court. Yeah, absolutely. Maintaining confidence. Whoever that person is, love that, because often the conversation is not around how high our confidence can be, but how much it can endure. How long can you sustain it? So really good thought there. And the last one was around self-confidence and learning new skills. Sorry, self-confidence in learning new skills. I saw that last night with my daughter. She's just learned to tumble or to somersault, and there was a lot of tears, and then suddenly she's got it and she's a different girl. So I'm sure you can all imagine similar situations with your own athletes. Thank you so much. I know that we have the ability to ask questions in our chat and to even turn our microphones on, but just for the time being, we'll use Slido throughout to really build on the things that you're hoping to learn and the understanding that you bring to tonight's session. But Bryn, hopefully at the end, we'll have a few minutes to maybe facilitate a question and answer in real time. So if you do have a question that isn't answered, my job is to answer it tonight. If I can't, then I probably haven't done my job, but that's really the agenda for us, to make sure that you leave tonight with really good strategies, things that you can use with immediacy. And so that's going to be our starting point. So thank you so much for jumping in on that one. Lots of really great responses there. Okay, so just some workshop intentions before we get started. Feel free to ask questions throughout. So, Bryn, if there are questions in the group chat, I might get you to maybe facilitate that and jump in at the appropriate times to make sure that we're touching on those important points that people are making. Be honest. I think it's really important that in these workshops, I've done a lot of these in a lot of sports at a range of different levels. And the number one thing that I always reflect on is the need for honesty for myself and for you guys as we approach these conversations. And also to have a growth, or if we can adopt a growth mindset. So really just parking at the door what we know and recognizing that that is all valuable, and we're going to use that as a point of departure to continue our learning. So that's really important. Stay engaged if you can. Thank you so much for Tony, Greg, Simon, and John so far. Your computers, cameras are on. I know that it's not always the case for everyone. If I was at home, I'd probably have it off because my kids would be running amok. But if you can be engaged with your cameras on, I would really encourage you to do that, because it certainly will allow me to, maybe from time to time, I might throw to a couple of people and ask for your opinions, and we'll get a chance to maybe get around to everyone. So if you'd like to be part of that part of the session, please, if you can, stay engaged with your cameras, and yeah, let's move into it. Final point there, follow up. So if from tonight you don't quite get an answer that you're looking for, or you'd like more access to some research or to some key, some key resources, please reach out through Bryn to myself. I've also got some details at the end. So let's get going here. Part one tonight is really about confidence, and I've deliberately split confidence and resilience. So we've got sort of 2 sessions to work through, but I'm really hoping that you guys look forward to this first bit, because this is one of the funnest workshops that I can deliver on confidence. It's really exciting. It's so important because, as many of you have already realized, there are lots of times when athletes will have a diminished sense of self-belief, and it can be fleeting or it can be enduring. And there's lots of reasons that can be attributable to increases or decreases in the belief that an individual can achieve or get the job done. And without going through all of these examples, you can probably relate to a lot of these if you're a coach or a parent. If you're a parent, maybe your child has been injured and the road back is actually quite difficult, and people don't often see the psychological injury, they see the physical injury, and that can be a challenge to rebuilding self-belief. And perhaps if you're a coach or in a development role, maybe there are challenges here with trying to build form and consistency in your team. And one minute Sam's playing really well, and next week he's out of form, and then he's in a mood, and then you don't get the best out of him, and there are these slumps until it happens again. There becomes this very vicious cycle of increasing and decreasing self-belief. So we understand that there's a lot of factors that impact on confidence. The good thing tonight is that if you take nothing else away, athletes, with your assistance, athletes can regulate that. So we don't need to leave it to chance, and we don't need to wait for the next time they get in the best players or the next time they get some positive feedback. There's a lot of things they can do to regulate self-belief without relying on hopefully playing good the next week, which is often what we see in the youth context. I guess I'm going to bring you guys into it again. So hopefully you're going to get used to this, because there's going to be more than one occasion where I want you guys to jump in. So again, your mobile phone should be synced to this Slido discussion. I want you to try and volunteer one hurdle with building and maintaining confidence in athletes. So we've just identified some of the things that impact it. But if you're a coach or a parent, you're trying to really build up your child or your athlete's self-belief as it pertains to basketball, what's one of the hurdles? What's one of the challenges with that? When I've delivered these workshops in the past, sometimes people say, oh, it depends on who is giving the feedback. It might depend on the timing of the feedback. So there could be lots of different things that impact our ability to help athletes build confidence. So we've got one example here already: passion to help them, and putting too much pressure. Yeah, really good. So I'm not sure who that person is, but 2 from 2 now. I'd love for you guys to keep volunteering your answers there, because that's a really good one. Passion is a massive one. And really what it is, it's believability. It's, do I trust that the advice, the feedback, the reinforcement, the direction is something that I can rely on? And I guess juxta to that is this notion of pressure, or expectations for success, or expectations for outcome. John, athletes' view of tangible outcomes, really good. So often seeing is believing, and there needs to be a recognizable marker of improvement that is essential, really. So that's really good. Managing setbacks, absolutely. Fear of injury, definitely, Kathy. We've got a couple more participants typing, but these are really good examples. And I guess what I wanted to do tonight is just start with, firstly, why why it's important, or how important it is, because it affects our game in so many ways. Just a couple of other ones here: maintaining confidence when doing great work but not scoring. Absolutely. I think that comes down to John's point around the ability to see tangible outcomes. If athletes can't see their improvement or believe in their improvement, then it certainly slows the ability to withstand or to maintain self-belief. Yeah, absolutely, Simon. And another one here around measures that are out of their control, court time as an example. So that's really good, guys. Fantastic. I'm just going to move to the next slide, but I do know there's a couple of people still typing there, so please add them. And I think what I can do is I can certainly cycle your responses collectively back to Bryn as the session continues. But thank you so much. If we move to the next slide, how important is confidence? Well, this is one of my most important slides because people often attribute confidence to sport performance, and it is true. They are inextricably linked. Seldom, you can never really have expert performance or elite performance or high achievement without high levels of self-belief. And if you do happen to achieve when you don't really believe, so I know there's a play on words there, but if you achieve in sport and have a low level of self-belief, then what happens is the next time around, you attribute your chances of success as luck, something out of your control. So confidence is really important because it actually has a forward-facing, if you like, consequence for performance. But in the immediate term, I want to highlight 6 things that confidence is good for. So number 1, we know that high self-belief impacts what we call affect. And this is the ability to arouse positive emotions. And you might be thinking, well, that's obvious, but do we know why? What the research tells us is that if you can arouse or regulate positive emotion yourself, that you are more readily able to exercise the type of performance that you need when competition lies in the balance. So do you need to be aggressive or do you need to be assertive? And sometimes you see players that might quote unquote overcook a moment, or they might overplay a moment. And it's often those athletes who do not know how to arouse positive emotion. So affect is a really crucial outcome of positive self-belief in sport. We also know that confidence impacts behavior. So this is the physical. What is our ability in basketball result in when we have high confident athletes? Well, we know that it can increase effort. And so there's a physiological response there that impacts, in this case, basketball performance. But we also know that confidence can affect what we call psychological momentum. And so this is often a phenomenon where things tend to work for you or events seem to work against you. And what the research tells us is that athletes are able to more readily arrest negative momentum when they have high levels of self-belief because they demonstrate a more deterministic attitude. Those who have a low level of self-belief are unable to capitalize on momentum when it's working for them, and consequently, they're unable to slow negative momentum when things are going against them. So this is really important in terms of what we do with our bodies. And then finally, in terms of the final element, cognition. So these are the things that are happening typically in our decision-making capability. We know that confidence can facilitate concentration. Really, really important in sports that necessitate continuity and repetition. Cycling is a good example. Running is an example. Team sports are a good example. We also know that goal setting is impacted by confidence. We know that low confidence athletes tend to set lower goals and don't really work hard to achieve them over a longitudinal sort of sample, so say a season. We also know that athletes with high confidence not only set higher goals, but they actually actively work much harder to achieve them. So there's certainly some, if you like, cognitive differences there in terms of goal setting. And then the final one is that we know that confidence impacts tactics and strategies. So some athletes do not play to win. They are athletes that play not to lose. Athletes that are low in confidence are the ones that don't want to make the winning play. They actually don't want to pass the ball in when the game is in the balance. On the other hand, athletes who are really high in confidence are not only those that want to seize those moments, they are willing to create risk in order to create advantage. So we know that from the perspective of A, B, C, affect, behavior, and cognition, that confidence is one of the most important, if you like, superpowers for sports performance. Hopefully that information is landing okay with you guys. So the next part of building towards the ingredients, I'm getting to that, the things that we need to be able to do to build and maintain strong confidence, is just to understand that confidence can manifest in different ways. And once upon a time, certainly in the 60s, 70s, 80s, some of the mainstream sports psychology research indicated that it's about having high confidence, that 10 out of 10 confidence is better than 8 out of 10 confidence. And we would all agree with that. But the literature in more contemporary sort of circles would indicate that it's not enough. To have fleeting moments of 10 out of 10 confidence is not enough. It's actually better to have 9 out of 10 confidence that endures a whole season. And so it's really about trying to help athletes develop a malleable sense of self-belief, something that can endure for much longer across a game or a week or a season. And it can manifest in 3 different ways. You can be confident in your decision making. You can be confident in terms of your physical skill and training, and you can be confident in terms of your resilience. And so I offer you these examples. This is Sam when he was, let's say, 12. Of course, this isn't me, but Sam at 12 had really, really good decision-making capability when he was playing under 14s. Certainly relative to, say, Division 2 back in Mount Gambier. And so really good decision-making. He was one of the most skilled players in that division. And when he was double-teamed, he still found a way to really be effective and help his team win. So at that level, against players of a similar ability, Sam stacked up really well. But Sam then got asked to play in the under-16s the next week. Bigger players who are suddenly a little bit better at decision-making, their physical skill and training is more advanced, and maybe Sam hasn't been tested against this type of defense or individual before. And so suddenly, same player, same ability, same decision-making capacity, and yet a completely different level of self-belief. And so this is really what I'm highlighting tonight, that in these moments, whether it's injury, whether it's being deselected from a team, whether it's being promoted to play at a higher level, we have to understand that young people's confidence will fluctuate. And the key to this entire discussion is to give these children, give these athletes the tools, help them develop the tools to regulate self-belief. And that's sort of where we're going to go tonight. So for the next little bit, I'm going to talk about what the research tells us. There are 9 crucial ingredients for rebuilding, maintaining self-belief. So that when you're promoted to a higher level, or that when you suffer an injury, or that when you get some negative feedback, or whether you're feeling the pressure from other people, there's a lot of things that we can do. And before we start ticking these off, I just want to preface this next part by saying what we should be aiming to do as parents, as coaches, as people that are working with young athletes, is to optimize all of these. Some of these is not enough, because you'll find that I think in many circles, we're doing this anyway. So some of these is not enough if we want children to regulate self-belief. So let's jump in. The first one. Okay, the first ingredient here is, oh, there it is, mastery. Okay, so this is crucial that we help young athletes identify a weapon, something that they are good at relative to everyone else. Now, we'll talk about the situation where you might have an athlete that is just good at everything. They may not actually excel at one thing, but you'll find in basketball that there's usually someone that can react quicker. There's probably usually someone that's a really good passer. There's usually someone that can use their voice before others can recognize what is happening. There are usually those that can organize an offense quicker than the other person. And especially with young athletes, especially, it might come down to skills. Who's the best rebounder? Who is the best shooter? Who is the best free throw shooter? And you need to really work through all the different facets of the game to help young people realize what are they good at. Okay, this is absolutely crucial. And the reason why is because when things aren't going well, losing games, out of form, having a hard time at home, and it's impacting their psychological well-being, the one thing that young people can rely on is the thing that they're good at. So you really need to work with them to help identify a weapon. Now, if you say to me, Sam, I know a young athlete and they are 7 out of 10 across the board. They're not that quick. They're an okay shooter. They're fairly reliable, but they don't really excel in one thing. That's one of the biggest challenges for coaches. It's not common, because most athletes typically have something that they are good at when they present to you as a basketballer. But in those situations, that's one where you really need to work with them to identify the thing that they enjoy the most. What is the thing that they really enjoy? It might be shooting. I mean, what basketball doesn't enjoy shooting? Most I would imagine do, right? But you've got to find the thing that they enjoy doing if there's an absence of a weapon. But in maybe out of 9.5 out of 10 circumstances, there's usually something that you can really quickly identify. So, John, I'm just going to jump to you, given that you're on my screen. You've got your computer on. I'd love you to unmute. Are we allowed to do that, Bryn? Can we unmute our... if not, at least maybe into the chat, could you maybe volunteer an example of an athlete that comes to mind, whether it's your child or someone you coach? Is there a person that comes to mind? And if so, what is their weapon in basketball? Three-pointers, brilliant. The ability to shoot three-pointers. So that's a great example. So there's not everyone that can do that as their weapon. The thing that they can go to when the game isn't going well, they can more often rely on that. So that's a great one. And we could go right around the group, but as long as you can identify something, help them identify something that they're good at, then you've ticked the first box. So well done, guys. Okay, next one. Number 2, visible gains. And you guys have already identified this, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know. It's the demonstration of ability. So for parents out there that might be listening, getting your children to training matters, yes, because you want them to develop. Getting them to training is also crucial for them, because if they can't see their improvement, then that's going to diminish their ability to regulate confidence. If they can see improvement, the most likely environments for that to actually happen is in these spaces where they train. So going to training is crucial. You can level this in any other achievement domain. If I was to sit an exam or a practice exam, I might get 30%. And if I try it again the following week, I might get 40%. Well, that's a visible gain, even though I'm failing. If I try the practice exam again, I might get 60%. Suddenly I'm getting closer to a HD or a really strong grade, but I'm still a little bit off. But you're seeing visible gains. This is what we call demonstration of ability. So it's incumbent on coaches to continue to set up environments where there is measured success or measured ability to see improvement. That's really, really crucial. The third one here is physical and mental preparation. We talked about the exam example. I'll build on that here. Many times at university, you can see 2 types of students walking into an exam: those who are nervous but prepared, and those who don't want to go in because they have completely crammed the night before. They have not had a good physical and mental preparation. And it's the same in sport. So you'll find that those who present with really good physical and mental preparation are usually those that are more up for either the training or the game itself. And there's a really interesting study that actually looked at and actually measured 2 different types of preparation over the course of a season with young athletes. Those that had a lot of time that was well structured and organized to prepare them for games and training, versus those who had a lot more haphazard or random preparation. And you actually found that not only were there differences in state anxiety, so the ability to manage negative emotional states, but also their ability to regulate belief. So this one is absolutely crucial. I wouldn't say anything there that you guys don't understand. If you're a coach, you can imagine feeling unprepared and having to coach in the next 10 minutes. Of course, that would impact your self-belief to actually do as well as you could do. So there's the first 3. Moving on to the next group here. Well, hopefully we're ticking these boxes. Social support. Now, the word that I want to use here is literacy, because when we think of social support, we think of family, coaches, peers, our extended network, whether it be through our teams or our neighbors or whatever it might be. It doesn't really matter who you identify as part of your social support network. What matters is that you perceive that it is available, even if you don't need it at this very point in time. And so the ability to identify a support network is really reliant on what we call literacy. So the ability to identify, to access, and then to utilize. And so in this space, even though you may not have a supportive coach or a supportive parent or a supportive sibling, the perception that there is someone in your environment that is available to you is absolutely critical. You need people in your corner. And so social support is an obvious resource to build and maintain self-confidence. Number 5, physical self-presentation. This is what I call the haircut test. I probably needed one before tonight, Bryn. I apologize. This is basically where you typically have a higher level of self-efficacy depending on how you perceive your physical self-presentation. So when I walk into the hairdresser salon, I feel okay, no worries, but I feel a lot better when I walk out. I feel cleaned up, I'm happy with my purchase, and I'm actually looking forward to just jumping into the mirror at some point and actually seeing, how does my haircut look? Physical self-presentation in basketball would be the same. Those that present really well for preseason versus those who have done nothing and are coming to your first session for the first time. We can all imagine those feelings and how it impacts on our ability to believe we can complete the session to a high level. Number 6 is coach leadership. Okay, now this is a really, really contentious topic because a lot of athletes that I've worked with over the journey have said, sometimes I don't believe in my coach. Sometimes I don't have a strong relationship with my coach, and it's impacting my ability to really optimize my confidence. And so we've had to work really hard to talk through, based on a lot of the research, the best ideas to sort of navigate that. And the best thing we've come up with is track record. And so if Simon, Mike, and Greg are my coach, then really important that if there are interpersonal conflicts, or if we keep losing lots of games and there's a diminished sense of buy-in, that you continually find ways to reinforce track record. Now, you can't just go out and boast on social media that I'm the best coach and I've coached this person that's gone on to the NBA or a high level. But if you can find other people in your environment to do that for you, that's really the key here to maximizing coach leadership. So one thing you could do, if at the end of this session, you know that you've got a fluctuating level of belief in yourself as a coach or even as a parent, one thing you can refer to, separate the individuals and look at the track record. And so it's a much more objective assessment of the trust and the belief that you can have in the coaching leadership and the coaching group available. In most instances, though, coaches are a great resource and are a great asset for young people. And so the lesson there is just to keep building on the work that you're doing, because it's obviously a crucial ingredient. You can't maximize confidence if you don't have strong coach leadership. So really crucial element there.
Hey, Sam, just before you move on, Mark
Yes.
just asked about the physical self-presentation. If you could just elaborate on that, maybe just a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just come back to the slide there. So physical self-presentation here, maybe an example, that might be useful. So if Sam Elliott arrives at football preseason on day 1 and hasn't done any work at all, versus Mark, who has done a preseason before the preseason, you could probably assess very quickly both Mark and Sam's appetite to run the 2K time trial before we've even run it. So that's an example of the physical self-presentation or the haircut test. It would be same as jumping onto the starting blocks of a swimming race, 50-meter freestyle. Mark has done a mountain of work and Sam has just come out from Christmas and hasn't done too much. So in that moment, before the race is won or lost, before the race has even started, there are different elevations of confidence that Mark would exhibit compared to myself. So hopefully, Mark, those examples talk you through an explanation of physical self-presentation. I got a thumbs up, so thank you very much. Thanks, Bryn. If there's any more, please continue to just let me know. Okay, where are we? 7, vicarious experience. See it, believe it. So I love talking about examples, so why not another one here? Vicarious experience. I'm not sure how basketball trainings are set up, but often it can be whether through a buddy system or through social events. A really talented under 14 player may see a really talented under 16 player, and similar ability, similar age. Sometimes they're a similar age, but might be playing in different age groups. This is an example of vicarious experience. Players tend to draw extreme confidence from those who they can actually relate to. So this is something that we can see in many sort of domains, but especially in sport. A great example with my own children, if you'll indulge me for a moment, my now 7-year-old daughter, a couple of years ago, didn't want to jump off the couch. was in tears, wanted to do it, but was really nervous and then didn't want to. But then at the time, my 2.5-year-old son jumped on the couch, and you can imagine what he did. He just jumped off and fell flat on his face, but got up and did it again. And suddenly my daughter drew enormous confidence or self-belief from seeing someone else that they can relate to do the very thing that they're striving to do. So vicarious experience is really a matter of seeing it and believing it. You can boil this down to role modeling, but it's more than just that. It can't just be any person that has I guess a broader figure of adulation. They need to be someone that the individual can see themselves as. And so that's really important in basketball. There's no point having a point guard being an idol for another player that plays a completely different role or position. So it's really important that we work closer and with the athletes to help them identify really good role models that they can resonate with. And that will actually make vicarious experience an indispensable tool for regulating self-belief. Number 8, environmental comfort. So this one, probably as the name suggests, is really about having a level of familiarity with the environment that you play or train in. And so if you're in a situation where your child makes, I don't know, like a representative team, state, country, metro, I'm not sure how it works, national, or even going further, the opportunity to play overseas as an example, in these environments that you're unfamiliar with, there's often some nerves and some anxiety, and that energy is an example of the discomfort that you feel because you don't really know where to put your bag or where mum and dad are going to sit or where the court 4 is. I can see court 1 and court 2. And so this is something that coaches and even parents can support children to do by maybe going to the venue a week earlier or a day earlier and shooting a few hoops. Or it might simply be if you can't actually access the courts in Melbourne because you're going to state in a month's time, that you can actually work with them to use some mental visualizations to mentally recreate the experience in their mind. You might be able to find a photo, for example, of the stadium and just look at it and say, just close your eyes and just imagine what this would be like to walk into in 4 weeks' time. So this is a crucial one because there's an element of perception that you're relying on. But if you can actually go and train at the stadium or the courts, or play at those courts, that's a massive advantage. And I think you can all relate to that because if you've ever played basketball as a young child and scored lots of points on a particular court, the next time you go back there, you tend to have really positive memories of the last time you were there and thus have an elevated sense of self-belief. If you've gone to another court or venue where you have played really poorly, then the next time you go there, it's actually really hard to generate the same level of self-belief because your environmental discomfort is still very much the same. So it's really about trying to become familiar with those environments. And our last one here, so hopefully we're ticking off these boxes as a community of practice here tonight, is called situational favorableness, or what I'll just call Richmond. Now, as a Crows fan and as a diehard Crows fan, I hate telling this story, but it's actually written into the biography of the Richmond Football Club as it pertains to the AFL. So situational favorableness is one. It's a resource of self-belief that is reliant on how you perceive a situation. And so if Simon is coaching the local basketball team and Greg is the other coach of the basketball team, and Simon receives the team sheets and he looks over the other side of the court and realizes that Greg's missing his top 3 players, Simon would understandably feel in that moment a heightened sense of belief that his team will probably do okay tonight because he perceives favor. He perceives that something has happened that is going to advantageously help his team. It doesn't necessarily guarantee a win. The game hasn't even started. There could be many things that unfold accordingly, but in that moment, there is an elevated sense of belief. So situational favorableness is where you perceive that something will advantage you. The Richmond example is when the Crows and Richmond played in the 2017 grand final, and on the Friday before, I think it was Trent Cotchin and Taylor Walker were in the parade holding the cup aloft in front of the adoring fans, and there was a very strong recollection from not only the players but the coaching staff about the Power Rangers stance of the Crows at the time and the need to challenge that even before the game. And And Trent Cotchin basically said he's going to be the last one to put his hand down. He's not going to lower the cup first. Doesn't mean anything, but it was just something that he said he was going to do. And there was this awkward 5, 8, 10 seconds where no one was lowering the cup that they were displaying to the crowd. And after an unspecified amount of time, Taylor Walker drops his arm and lowers the cup first. And in that moment, it's written into the biography of the Richmond Football Club for all you fans that might follow Richmond. Damien Hardwick is quoted as saying, "It's funny, but I drew enormous confidence from that one moment." Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win, but it's one example where you can self-regulate belief when you perceive something to favour you. So at the expense of a player withdrawing at the last minute, that could be one example. Winning the toss could be an example. I'm not sure if you do that in basketball, but deciding which end you might shoot to first. So lots of different things there that you should be looking to try and work with your athletes to leverage. In summarising them, what does the research tell us? You should be trying to tick all of these boxes, not one of them, not two of them, but all of these with your athletes. And they can't do it by themselves. We can't just give them a checklist and say, you should be the most confident person all the time now, because of course injuries do take their toll, setbacks through deselection take their toll, negative feedback from coaches take their toll, but the way in which they rebound a lot quicker, the way in which athletes have a more stable level of self-belief is to tap into these resources. So as parents, who I assume are in this group, as well as coaches, that is absolutely crucial. If you'd like to hear more on this, and this is a shameless plug for my podcast, but I have a really great resource here called Beyond the Club, and it's basically Ben Hook from The Advertiser and myself, sort of like a bit of a yin-yang, insider-outsider co-hosting model, and we just get into the biggest issues in sport and tease out some really good solutions for community sport, whether it's parents, volunteers, coaches. There's a great episode here on rebuilding confidence. So if you're taking notes, or if you'd love to hear some more, feel free to jump onto Spotify, on Apple, wherever you might find your pods. There's some really good information there on a range of topics, but especially with the confidence. Okay, I'm just going to pause there for a second because we're going to move into part 2. But Bryn, I might just flick to you for a second. Were there any other questions that we'd missed? Or maybe now is a good time to quickly take a couple of questions on the topic of confidence.
There's nothing in the chat, but if anyone wants to chuck something in the chat, or if you're comfortable, you should be able to unmute your mic now. So feel free to ask any questions.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Just curious, so I'm coaching under 18 girls team, and just from that, I think it was the 9th one, situational favorableness. So would an example of that just be, just trying to like construct, your perception on some situation, say each game you play a team or something like that, but just through observations and whatever it might be, just trying to, discuss with your team something that you feel is in your favor as a team for that night, just to like sort of help just, change how they're feeling in those moments as they start the game?
Yeah, Simon, great question. It has to be related to an event, something that is real and something that you interpret. This is the creative element to it, something that you perceive, something that you interpret to benefit you. So as an example, if all of your players report for the game before the other team, that may be that's an event. But that's one example that you can say, hey, guys, I'm not making this up. We are prepared. We were here first. And suddenly you've taken the first step to giving them a sense of, well, maybe we are okay, because Simon didn't make up that we were here first. We were here first. Everyone's here, everyone's reported, everyone's signed in, and away we go. It might be at halftime and you might be losing. It might be like 25-12. And how do you rebuild self-belief in that moment? So situational favor might be things like, look, one of the things that we can do is start to reassert feelings of control. So let's tick some boxes. Everyone grab some water, tick. Everyone go to the toilet, tick. Everyone take a couple of minutes, tick. Everyone check in, certainly in football with their line coaches, tick. And the minute you start ticking these boxes, you start to build evidence. It's not it's not fake. You've generated an auditable track record of things that you're doing to rebuild some control. And they are ways where you can get your players, your teams to start to buy in again to the next message. So yeah, favor is really built on events, but it's how you interpret them. It could be, as I said, the team sheet comes in and Tony, the star player for the opposition team, is no longer playing tonight. He's a late out and he scored 25 points last week. It doesn't mean you're going to win the game, but it is an event that you can interpret to favor you. Or maybe it could simply be, you know, something that's impacted you at training this week. Like, guys, normally we're interrupted at training. We're getting pushed off the court 5 minutes early. We've had the full 2 hours of training this week. So we've actually got something that's going to help us take the first opportunity tonight. And they're the kind of things that are something that you perceive, as the name would suggest, to give you advantage. So really good question there, Simon. Hopefully I've given you a couple of examples to work from.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's great.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay. We'll keep moving on. So again, feel free to follow us on those socials or follow that podcast for some really cool information on that we go into this in a lot more detail, and there'll be something there for everyone. Part 2, developing resilient athletes. Now, early on, there was a comment around grit, and I just want to distinguish the two because this is the problem with YouTube and mainstream podcasters and the issue with popular science, and often ideas get conflated. And so when we look at resilience and the notion of grit as an example, they are similar but they are different. Okay, so resilience is like a stress ball, and tonight we're going to talk about how you can recoil, that when pressure is applied, that you don't lose your integrity, that you still maintain your shape or your function. That's what this topic is tonight about resilience. Grit is similar to resilience, but it's striving towards a specific goal. And so I wonder, maybe when I do these talks, that really what organizations are looking for is the topic of grit as opposed to resilience. But given that we've spoken about this, Bryn, as confidence and resilience, we'll talk about resilience. But feel free to ask questions throughout, because this is one that, again, I'm sure will pique your interests along the way. It's been a lot of me talking for a bit, so as you can imagine, it's time for you guys to jump in. So to begin with, I want you to volunteer, if you feel comfortable. How do you think athletes cultivate or build resilience? What do they need in order to build this capability of elasticity, this ability to withstand pressure? So feel free, if you haven't already, scan the QR code and jump in. And for those that are already there, looking forward to seeing some of your responses. Okay, so John's got in first. Thank you, John. Feeling of safety in their ability. Simon, reflecting on challenges in a positive way. Okay, good. We'll definitely look at safety. We'll definitely look at positive, or looking at things with a positive attitude. Empowered to impact things within their control. Excellent. So again, I'm not sure who Anonymous is, but they're really offering some great ideas there. So absolutely, we'll look at notions of control. Confidence to make mistakes and grow. Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be captured in all of this. Pushing through difficult games. So that's probably the notion of sort of perseverance despite adversity. So that's a really good one as well. Kathy, to experience failure. Pardon me. But then to know that success can come after. Great point, Kathy. And I guess a quick response, yes and no. I mean, success can come after. Many cases it doesn't for a long time, and that's one of the great challenges about this topic, that we're not there to say anything other than if resilience, as we understand, is something that you want to develop, that there's lots of tools that we can do to assist that. But great point there. Mark, coming back from challenge, yes. Responding to challenge. EW, having a good support network. And Simon, rehab and return post injury, supportive parents. Yep, great points here. So you guys really have done my job for me. I'm not sure there's there'll be some new things, but what I'm going to probably do now is join the dots for you so that you can take this information and use it, as early as today. Resilience is something that has been stolen. It's been stolen by a lot of really articulate individuals and spoken about in ways that aren't consistent with what we actually know in the research. So when we talk about evidence-informed understandings or evidence-based understandings of resilience, it's really important to maybe bust some of the myths and some of the facts, or highlight some of the facts about resilience. So often resilience is spoken about as an innate quality of an individual, that they were just born, they are just more resilient than other people. That is one of the top myths of resilience, that resilient people don't let things bother them. There's nothing that really worries them. That's not true either. As well as the fact that resilient people don't need help. They don't need to rely on other people. They don't need a psychologist. They don't need strong social support. The facts are that resilience is a skill that can be developed by anyone. And so it relies on the individual plus the environment. And we'll talk more about that. We also know that resilient people work through pain and suffering. In other words, they are not immune to challenge. They just have a different way of withstanding those types of pressures and not losing their integrity or their well-being. And then finally, the point here around resilience is that resilient people have a support system. Resilient people don't do this alone. They don't work through basketball alone. They actually have a very strong network of support around them. So in sort of dispelling some of those myths, I wanted to talk about maybe a bit of a definition to begin with. So from an applied perspective, in other words, for coaches, for parents, for people that want to help athletes develop, resilience is really helping them to withstand stress by using a range of psychological factors to maintain function. We want these young people to continue to function in a really healthy and productive manner. Healthy doesn't mean they won't have setbacks. Healthy means that they can withstand stress by using the psychological assets to their disposal. So let's get into what that could actually look like. Oh, one more point, sorry. Some elements are innate. Okay, so some people are more optimistic typically than the person next to them, but a lot of the other elements that you need to cultivate resilience can actually be developed. So anyone that walks away from this session thinking that resilience is not for that athlete, they're not able to be to demonstrate a high level of resilience, it's just not true. It just doesn't stand up to social or scientific scrutiny. So let's jump in here. Now, there is one crucial ingredient, and that is exposure to stress. So if you want to develop resilient young people, they need to be exposed to stresses. But this is where I need to be very careful with how I explain this, because I don't want you guys to think, you beauty, I'm just going to make all their training very hard or all their home life very hard, and that's what's going to help them. The school of hard knocks approach. That is not the lesson at all. It's really about having moderate exposure or incremental exposure to stresses. So if we were to go out and take the school of hard knocks approach, the excessive exposure, what we actually end up doing in the short and long term is increasing not only state anxiety and stress, but we actually then expose them to what we might consider an enduring level of suboptimal performance and eventually withdrawal. So excessive exposure to stress is not what we're advocating for at all. On the flip side, modest exposure wrapped up in cotton wool actually slows their development of resilience. It's not that it's a bad thing, and it's not that it's a bad thing from time to time, but if that was the only tool in your toolkit, modest exposure to stresses, then we actually we actually do a disservice to young people because we slow their development of resilience. So that's actually a challenge as well. So you're trying to find the sweet spot, and I've got two slides here to maybe highlight in your environments, whether it be at home, whether it be driving to the game when you're having a chat to them, whether it be on match day as a coach, thinking about the different ways we can think about moderate or incremental exposure to stress. So a resilience model, okay, these are very simple to understand. They're consistent with most dominant models in psychology, thinking of flow as just one example. But if you were to decrease challenge and really decrease the level of support around a young person, then their ability to develop resilience starts to stagnate. So we obviously want to avoid that where we can. If we give them high level of social support, mums, dads, peers, friends, uncles, aunties, teachers, coaches, teammates, everyone is rooting for this person. They are there to support them, but the challenge is very low. Then we find that we develop a lot of comfort. Okay, so this is something that in the long term, again, slows the development of resilience. If we go the other way, I think you beauty, let's crank up the pressure. Let's expose these young people to challenge that they are not ready for and that they cannot psychologically cope with. Okay, with low levels of support, that type of challenge is going to result in an unrelenting behavioral change, which is not conducive for developing resilience. And so you really want to find ways, it's almost like volume, turning it up and down, and on an individual basis, not an age basis, an individual basis, finding the sweet spot between optimal support and optimal exposure to stress. Another way of looking at it, and apologies for my one, it's probably my second now, my second football example, but if you'll allow me, often you can think of this in terms of what might happen before a game of football. And so if we were to orientate this table here, as you look at it on the left-hand side, if we're looking at a horizontal axis, my mouse over here, at this end of the continuum, let's say low exposure to stress, and let's say at this end of my axis, really high exposure to stress. Now, there are some athletes that will be in their zone. They'll be at their best when they have really low exposure to stress. So these are athletes that might say, don't talk to me pre-game. I don't need you to check in with me pre-game. Don't remind me about my role pre-game, because you've already spoken to me about it and you've messaged me and we trained it on Thursday and I'm fine to go. So you can imagine there are some athletes that we work with that from time to time will be at their best with very, very low exposure to stress. Then there are other athletes that need some exposure to stress pre-game. These are athletes that like the team meeting. They like to have a bit of a chat before the game about their role and reinforce what they are responsible for. And so these are athletes that need just a little bit more, if you like, state anxiety in those moments in order to be at their best. And then there are other athletes, and you may know some of them, I'm not sure, I'm just looking for some facial expressions here, those athletes that can't get enough from you pre-game. They want your attention, they want the positive feedback, they want you to tell them about their role twice, they are looking for confirmation, they're looking for clarity, they're looking to take on more responsibility. They need excessive, or certainly a higher exposure to state anxiety, or in this case, exposure to stress, in order for them to be at their best. And so there's a couple of lessons here about avoiding a one-size-fits-all approach to trying to help develop resilience in young people, because of course everyone is different. The second lesson here is understanding that certainly as a practical outcome, when you're working with your athletes, that you really need to tailor your support, because if you want to develop resilient athletes, that tailored support is absolutely crucial. Pardon me. Okay, so now we've got the key ingredient, stresses. We need to do something with that. So in my bowl or my circle here, we're actually going to do something now with these stresses in order to get to the end point, which is our responses, our performance, our ability to play the game really well, regardless of whether we're up or down by 30 points. So in these situations, there are 5 things that we need to work through in order to leverage stressor or stresses to build resilience. So this is a model that explains how we develop resilience. The first crucial tool to use this ingredient is confidence. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because we spent 40 minutes on that already, but it's a quick reminder, tick the boxes, tick all the boxes, not some of them. Optimize, work with your athletes over a season to understand these and to really build self-belief using these resources. Number 2, motivation. Now, there are lots of theories of motivation, but this is nonetheless crucial if stresses are to become the fuel for building or developing resilience. So what do we mean by motivation? Well, I think one of the most scientifically supported theories is the theory of self-determination. And for those that are familiar with it, fantastic. For those that are not, there are three components, or three what we call basic human needs that, according to this theory, we strive to satisfy: competence, relatedness, and autonomy. And you can relate this to maybe your workplace, your relationships, the sports that you play, that we strive to feel competent, that we can actually do, we have the ability to do something successfully. We strive to feel autonomous, that we have a condition of self-control, that we can kind of, to some degree, determine the outcome or determine how we play. And then relatedness, which is really around social connection. And so if you are a parent or a coach, you might start thinking about exposure to stresses. Motivation is crucial. How do I facilitate these types of things? So if I'm a coach, I'm making sure that training is designed in a way where all of my athletes feel some degree of competence with what they are doing. And if it means that I've got to lower the basketball ring down for my 4-year-old son so he feels like he is able to get the ball through the hoop, he's more than likely to persist the next time the ring goes up 2 centimeters and 2 centimeters and 2 centimeters. That's incremental exposure to stress or incremental exposure to challenge. But if I leave the ring at its height, he's not going to be able to shoot that ball even close, and he will lose interest. He'll stagnate very quickly. So the things that we do in training are crucial for helping our athletes feel some modicum of competence. Autonomy, this is the decision making. And I'm sure you guys do this really well if you're coaching, but even if you're a parent, what are things that we can do on the weekend with our children to help them feel like they have a level of control? So can we play some games with them where there are, might be just some pickup basketball, but we create a couple of conditions. Maybe you can't shoot from, maybe, I don't know, get some chalk out. Just, there's a square there. You can't shoot from there. You can shoot in front of it, behind it, around it, and any other part of the court. But just for the sake of changing the environment as simply as that, it actually allows children to explore other types of agency or decision making that is within their locus of control. So that's a way in which you can actually build autonomy and help them satisfy that need. And the other one is relatedness. The name speaks for itself, but those social connections that can be achieved through what happens not only during the game, but before and after are absolutely critical. If you tick these boxes, if you can optimize these basic human needs, then motivation becomes an absolutely essential part of utilizing stress to basically make lemonade, or in this case, to build resilience. The third key tool here is perceived social support. Now, we spoke a bit about this before, but I just want to spend a slide on this because there's actually a lot here. There's lots of different types of what we call social support. And I'm not going to go through all of these now in terms of their finite detail, but often when athletes are injured, as an example, that's a great challenge to one's resilience because they feel a lack of control and they might feel demotivated. They may feel a lack of belief. So all the things that are necessary to use stresses or injury in a really positive way suddenly become challenged. So social support is crucial because it can manifest in different ways. Some of it is emotional. So your ability to listen, okay, is one of the most fundamentally important forms of social support. And even if you don't do that, the athlete, if they perceive that if I did approach Kat and Mika, that they would listen, then that's usually one of the most important ways to start to enhance the perception of social support. Esteem, this is really positive affirmations and the kind of social support that you would get when you're at work. Well done, Tony. Good work today. You sold the most items. You're the employee of the month. So that's what we call esteem support. Informational support, that's where I've just been injured and John's given me tons of advice. When I did my hamstring, this is how I got back. You should be doing this and you should speak to that person. So that's a type of informational support. And then tangible support might be, I've just done my ACL and Mark just comes over and drops me off a meal. That's a tangible form of assistance, and he feeds the dog and he puts my bin out and fantastic. So perceived support or social support is absolutely crucial. understand that there are many ways that you can achieve that, especially in this, what we might call a wagon wheel of cultivating resilience. Okay, so confidence, motivation, and perceptions of social support, absolutely crucial. Okay, the next one here is focus. Now, often focus is attributable to goal setting, and there's a lot of research on goal setting. I've no doubt that, sorry, there's been a mosquito in my office and I've just killed it. I've been trying to get that for the last hour. SMART goals. I've no doubt that you are familiar with the acronym, and I just want you to know, for nothing else tonight, that when we're looking at focus or narrowing our attention to a specific goal, that the research would suggest that flexible goals have far greater outcomes when it comes to physical activity and movement compared to SMART goals. And so, as you can attribute that sort of back to organized sport as one example, there are lots of things that you can do to promote what we call flexible goals or open goals or adjustable goals. And this is where you can enlist what we call goal support. So coaches are crucial for this. Bryn may have goals at the start of the season. How often do we check in with him as the season unfolds to help him adapt them along the journey? Maybe he needs to increase the difficulty of goals. Maybe he needs to develop alternative goals for a range of reasons. But flexible goals are crucial if you want to see improvements in not only performance, but in optimizing your ability to what we call attenuate focus. The other thing you can do is to stack habits. And so this is something that's probably been popularized by James Clear, but really the idea of decreasing things that make goals or the achievement of goals difficult. So removing friction and increasing their visibility. So the examples that are commonly cited are, if you want to go for a run in the morning, the first thing you should see when you wake up is not your mobile phone, not the cat. It should be your shoes, your socks, your running shorts, your singlet. The more visible those habits become, then the more quickly you readily see what we might see, what we call a change in behavior. And so flexible goals, or the ability to set goals, is the I guess the most common example of what we call attenuating focus. And you need that, because without focus, then you can't actually use the stresses to your advantage. Okay, so there you have the recipe. Stresses can lead to resilience or a facilitative response, but you must have confident athletes to help them regulate that. You must create environments where they can self-determine their own motivation. Okay, you must help them understand that there are a range of social support available to you, and sometimes it's not just the absence of people that generate doubt in that way. It's not just knowing what social support actually is. So working through that with athletes is crucial. Focus, we've just spoken about. And the last one I want to talk about here is positive personality. And I think this came up in our previous Slido chat because, of course, the way in which you demonstrate particular traits that we would assign as positive personality dispositions are not always the same. And these are often different by age and by gender. So with my final Slido tonight, I wanted to actually give you a quiz. And it's something that we'll be able to do in real time, nice and simple. So get your phones ready. I see we have 22 in the session, so it'd be great to get most people voting on this. I can already see a lot of people who have joined the quiz. If you haven't, I'll give you a quick 10 seconds now to scan, enter that number, 5544 900. I sound like a Telly Mall ad on TV, but there's the code. And we will start this quiz now. So positive personality traits include, and you can select these on your phone, is it adaptive perfectionism? Okay, that's really those who have high perfectionism, but they can adapt it to different situations. Optimism. Is it competitiveness? Is it hope? Is it proactivity? Is it all of the above? Or is it none of the above? So when you think of a positive personality, you've got 8 seconds. Okay, so we've got a few people to vote, and the answer for the 86% is all of the above. So when we talk about what are positive personality traits or dispositions, adaptive perfectionism. Okay, so that is someone who is really meticulous about how they might prepare for basketball, but they have the ability to adapt as well. And so if the coach is suddenly no longer coaching because they're sick and someone else has to take over, that they can adapt into that environment and still strive. Optimism. So this is really seeing in any situation the best possible case scenario. That's another example of positive personality traits. Competitiveness is absolutely a positive personality trait. Anyone that lacks striving and therefore isn't competitive doesn't exhibit what we call a positive personality trait or disposition. Hope, as well as proactivity. Okay, so those that aren't willing to sit on their hands and wait, they are those that are always constantly finding angles or opportunities. So well done. Most of you guys did really well with that. I thought that that time would be enough, but it looks like it might have timed out a bit sooner. So thank you for participating in that quiz. Oh, there you go. We've even got a leaderboard. So well done for those that have been named. A nice little bit of visible reward for those that are playing at home. So thank you. Okay. Positive personality traits we've spoken about. So take home messages in terms of resilience. Stress is absolutely crucial, okay? But it's incremental exposure. So please understand that we need to temper the degrees to which we expose young people to stress. And it's not day one small stressor, day two small stressors, day three. It's not linear, okay? So you need to really work through with your children and the teams that you work with, what that might look like. And it might be sometimes 3 steps back, 2 steps forward as part of your journey. But over the course of a season, you'll find that almost like the stock market, there is incremental increases in exposure to stress as they cultivate a higher level of psychological coping. We also know that it's contingent. So resilience is contingent on the individual, yes, but also on the environmental conditions that surround them. So mum and dad, the coaches, the PE teacher, whoever it might be, are absolutely essential for making sure that these athletes optimize stress to develop resilience. You can't do it without a really optimal environment. And then finally, the psychological factors influence how stress is appraised. So you can't really do this without focusing on cultivating confidence, cultivating really good focus. So the flexible goals as an example. So work through some of this information. I'm happy to provide Bryn with an output, a PDF of tonight as a resource for you, because it is essential. Otherwise, exposure to stress isn't necessarily going to be a tool. It's actually going to stagnate development. Okay, nearly at the end here, guys. So there's our model. Okay, if you would like more information, not only on the topics that I've been through tonight, but on a range of other ones, as I said, tune into my podcast. We've got loads of different information there for you, freely available. It's a free repository of knowledge, and hopefully it's fairly easy listening. We've got 2 different types of information there. We've got on our right here, full-length episodes, and on our left, we've got these small bite-sized episodes where we really unpack these determinants of fun, and they could be crucial for your training and your time spent with your children in sport. That's basically it from me. For more information, feel free to drop me a line or through Bryn, send me any feedback. I really do hope I've answered all your questions, but Bryn, I think we are now on or just over time. I'm happy to hang around if there's anyone that wants to ask a question after the session. We might need to turn the recording off if that's possible. I'm not sure if that's the case, but can I say thank you to Basketball SA for the opportunity to join you this evening, and for those that are online that have joined us, I really hope that's been of use to work through, and I'd appreciate any feedback, maybe through Bryn, or if you want to send me an email. It's always nice for me to receive that, because the next time I do a session, if I can improve on anything, of course, I would want to. So thank you again, and really fantastic community to speak with, and good luck for your journeys as parents and coaches in basketball.
Thanks, Sam. Really appreciate you giving up your time as well. I thought it was wonderful and I took a lot out of it. If anyone does have any questions or they reflect on the session and they want to know something, feel free to drop me an email and I can pass it on to Sam and forward his response to you, or he can get in contact with you that way. So feel free to ask any questions at any time.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Bryn.